And that was a sink or swim situation, and I think I swam. When I first started it, I would think, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? But in the end, I was lucky enough that the key people that, I guess mentors, believed in me. Push yourself out of your comfort zone, because you learn only when you're out of your comfort zone. You don't always have to have the answers or the know-how, and don't be afraid to ask. The moment of, I'm not sure I want to do IT anymore. Believe it or not, I wanted to become a...
Sheani De Silva, a senior leader with a proven track record in delivering transformational change, working for organisations such as GSK, myDNA and Synapse. Today, she is Information Systems and Technology Director at Sodexo. Sheani has 35 years of experience working in technology, including over 15 years in leadership roles across different companies and countries. Today, we will delve into the wonderful career of Sheani, learning how she accidentally fell into IT, how she moved back to technology after 5 years working as a medical sales rep, and also how she found herself living and working in Japan. Sheani's story is a wonderful tale of pushing yourself outside your comfort zone to shape your career. Hi, Sheani. Thank you for joining me today and for sharing your story. I'm really interested and fascinated to learn how you went from medical sales rep to IT director. And we're going to get to that. But I guess how I want to begin is I'm just interested, as a child, did you dream of being an IT director?
Not at all.
No?
Not at all.
What was the big dream back then?
Believe it or not, I wanted to become a physiotherapist.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Okay.
And just didn't happen. So I got into IT purely by chance, took a job as a trainee computer operator.
Yeah.
And so began my IT career.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So you started off there, and that was with Glaxo?
Yeah, that's correct.
As a computer operator. So how did that come about? You just kind of, I don't want to say fell into the role, but you kind of fell into it?
I was a bit lost after I finished high school, and I had a friend who recommended me for a job at Glaxo as a trainee computer operator. It was just something to do until I worked out what I'm going to do with life.
Yep.
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people, and I learned a lot. Knew nothing about computers,
Yeah.
but they put me on courses, trained me, and ended up staying at the whole GSK franchise, if you like, for 25 years. So
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
And your actual entry into tech was in the early 90s. And I did some research around this. And I was thinking that back then it would have been a very male-dominant kind of area in technology. But I was actually surprised to learn that in 1990, that was actually the peak of women participating in the world of technology. 31% of all roles were women. It's actually declined since, which is really interesting. So I'm just curious, what kind of, I guess, what did you learn about tech at that time? Or why do you think maybe, that kind of participation started to drop off?
I actually think back then they didn't support as well as they do now women returning to the workforce after maybe leaving to have children.
Yeah, okay.
And I actually think that's what I saw, is that people would have children and there were no options for part-time work.
Right.
And I actually think a lot of people left for that. And I know people personally that left. And unlike now, a lot of people get a lot of support to come back part-time or transition back, and there's a lot more support for women returning to the workforce. So I actually believe that contributed to that decline.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess some of those barriers don't exist today.
Yeah.
In the same ways. And you at that point, after a few years, switched completely. So you did this big pivot from computer programmer to medical sales rep. How did that come about?
So I got to a point at Glaxo where I was a little bit lost again. Didn't really want to go down the path of being a programmer or anything too technical. And a couple of colleagues suggested, why don't you try becoming a medical rep? Now, I knew nothing about it. But again, Glaxo was very good in nurturing talent and supported me to do training and learn about, the pharmaceutical industry, therapy groups, and I was lucky enough to be offered a job as a medical rep, and I stayed as a sales rep for 5 years, and
You're right.
it was an amazing experience.
So you must have been pretty good.
Oh yeah, I think I was.
Yeah.
But taught me a lot also about really understanding the commercial side of the business.
Yeah.
That's when I really understood what Glaxo or Glaxo Wellcome and then later GlaxoSmithKline truly did, and engaged a lot with our the company's real customers, who are the doctors and the patients or healthcare professionals in general. But it gave me a good insight into what the commercial pressures are in an organization as well. Sometimes in support functions like IT, you don't really understand the commercial pressures.
Yeah.
And I learnt a lot that I still reflect on and use even now.
Yeah, right, because you're literally at the coalface at that point in terms of the monetization of the business and you know, how it operates. And so what would you say you learned from that experience that you've kind of carried through today?
Yeah. Even today, I really take the time to understand what the businesses truly need. So if I look at all my roles after that, it's really taking the time to talk to the business leaders, understanding the pressures, understanding the business strategies and how IT need to support the business and enable the business. It's really good having fancy tech initiatives, but if they're not going to enable the business growth, then it's a waste. It's a waste of money.
Yep.
So it's really taking the time to understand what the business drivers are, how can we support the growth and partner and truly becoming a business partner.
Yeah, fantastic. So really connecting the kind of the how and the what to the why.
Correct.
For you know, why the business exists and what you're trying to achieve. I'm also interested. Like, you had a fascinating career with GSK, by the way. Like, we could spend all day, I think, and just talk about your experiences there. And then when you found yourself coming back from that into tech, you then went to Japan, right? So this is just like the story that just keeps going. But so what was that about? How did you find yourself in Japan?
So that was I was very fortunate. I had some great leaders who, three in particular, Joanne Malampy, Mark Chalmers at the time, who supported me in taking an opportunity to go to Japan. The role there was to bring Japan into the GSK fold, again, building business partnerships with our global IT organization. I went there, I lived there, they were great. We lived as a family in Japan, so we were immersed in the culture, living in busy Tokyo, but really taught me a lot personally, really taught me to improve myself in terms of patience, being a lot more culturally aware as well. Mm-hmm. It is a very male-dominated culture, and even in a professional sense, so I had to really teach myself to be patient, respectful. It's a very respectful society, and resilience. I think that was also a very big learning for me. I had to really, head down, bum up, and just be patient, because things happen, but happen at a different pace in Japan. But it was an amazing experience, and loved it.
Yeah, I bet.
Pushed me out of my comfort zone, but that is the way that I learn, is when I'm out of my comfort zone. It's like a sink or swim sort of situation. So
you certainly swam.
And that was a sink or swim situation, and I think I swam.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really interesting. So in Australia, we have, it's very diverse, the people. Lots of immigrants come to Australia, particularly in the world of technology. So your learnings from your time in Japan, how does that kind of help shape what you do today when you lead a diverse team?
I think, yes, it is a very culturally diverse country. I think what I learned from Japan and, I guess, roles after that is really patience.
Yeah.
Stay the course, right? That's something that, even though I keep saying that I have had to improve on my patience, I am a very impatient person. So I think my time in Japan taught me patience, but it's something that I need to continually remind myself of. And that's something that I need to continue doing in my current role is I want things done yesterday because I just want to get on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
But patience and respect for my team and allowing them to get the job done in their time, but with support from me is really important. But I think patience is something that I have learnt back then, but continue to learn and practice in my current role.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about let's say aspects of communication? Was the business when you were in Japan, was that in Japanese or was it predominantly kind of in English? How did that work?
So it was a Japanese speaking business. So I did a little bit of Japanese language coaching before I left. And then once a week I had a Japanese language coach. My role in Japan was also to encourage the Japanese team to speak English.
Got it.
So it was, I always, for big meetings, they had a translator present. So for me and the other people in the room.
Yeah.
But again, it was a learning experience because most of the people that I dealt with in the business couldn't speak English.
Yeah.
So I had to try my hardest with my broken Japanese, get a message across. I wish that I kept up my Japanese because I was actually getting quite good, but I've let it go. After coming back to Australia, I had no opportunity to practice speaking.
Yeah.
But it was challenging, but also people around me supported me, and I managed. I got through. So, yeah.
You talked about your comfort zone and being outside of it. I think going to a foreign country to work in the first place, let alone a foreign country where you're communicating in a different language primarily, or most of the people are, that's definitely, I think, way outside the comfort zone.
Yeah, it was.
When you returned to Australia, from what I could see, you kind of undertook 3 more senior roles with GSK, the last with a global focus. Again, I'm just interested, how did you kind of navigate those different transitions through those different roles?
So, I came back to Japan as IT director for Australia and New Zealand. And that was a completely different role to what I had in Japan, but it was a role that required me to start to transition to use offshore models, support models. So I keep going back to patience and resilience because I had to actually really call on those two again to get me through the role as IT director, where I had to outsource the entire infrastructure team to a hub in Poland.
Wow.
So that was challenging, but again, my thing is being I'm an open person wherever I can. I'm very transparent as a leader, and I paint the picture to try and take people on the journey. And I took them on the journey of why we needed to do it. I won't say it was smooth, but we got through it and transitioned infrastructure to Poland. And then that opened up opportunities for me to take on a broader regional role after that. But what I guess the patience and resilience is what's flowed through from my time in Japan to all my roles after that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What again, you had that incredibly successful career through that time, and what for you kind of stands out as maybe your biggest achievement in that time?
I think what I did in the last part of the roles at GSK, I was the regional application services director, where we were consolidating local teams across all of the countries in Asia Pac and Japan to move to a centralized model based out of KL. In that role, I had to not only engage with IT, but I had to engage with the business, so build relationships with the GMs of all the GSK entities. And it was, again, a very challenging role because I had to sell to them this idea of taking people out of their country and supporting them from a central hub in KL. The things that I learned from that is just be open, honest, as transparent as you can, and take people on a journey. And that's what I did. And I think I'm most proud of that because I had to navigate a number of different cultures, language barriers, resistance from some general managers who didn't want to change. But we got there in the end, and I think they then saw the benefits financially because the savings we got out of consolidation went back to the countries, and they actually had better service as well. So I think that is probably the thing I'm probably proudest of.
Yes, fantastic. And through those roles, this is the last question on GSK, I promise. Through those roles, was there a kind of mindful path that you were trying to follow to get to where you got to eventually? Or were you kind of just taking opportunities as they presented?
Well, I had an end goal. We knew that it was part of a broader GSK IT transformation strategy, but how I navigated it for Asia Pac and Japan, I had to navigate it as I went along and faced hurdles or barriers. I did have an idea of where I wanted to get to. I did have the KPI of getting to that point by a certain time.
Yeah.
But in between, it was working it out.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Were there any of those roles that you kind of look back now and you regret taking?
No. I think every role, when I first started it, I would think, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? But in the end, I enjoyed every step in my career because it actually taught me different things. So no, I don't regret any of the roles.
How about conversely, were there any opportunities that were there for the taking that you didn't grab?
No, I don't. Nothing comes to mind.
Love it. So you just pretty much, if it was there, you pushed yourself.
If it was there and it was presented to me, I thought about it long and hard and talked to people. Yeah. What do you think? And I basically took it. Because I was lucky enough that the key people that I had, I guess mentors, believed in me. So but my final role at GSK, I had a mentor, John Harris, who just came out of the blue and said, I want you to do this in the region. And he believed in me. And Yeah,
that's fantastic. Did he continue to mentor you then once you went into that role? He
did, and he actually offered us, myself and the other regional directors around the world, we had an amazing executive coach, Jamie Payne, who really took us on and gave us the coaching and belief in ourselves that we could do this. So I've been really fortunate to have 4 key people, I think, in my career that believed in me and pushed me out of my comfort zone, and very grateful. But I very grateful to them and very grateful to the GSK for the opportunities.
I was going to say, from everything you've described and just from the way, looking at the way you talk about GSK, it was obviously an incredibly positive culture.
Yeah.
And a culture that really supported you to push yourself out your comfort zone without that kind of fear of failure.
Yeah.
Or maybe the negative consequences, let's say, of failure, because we all need to fail to learn sometimes. How did you feel when you left GSK after such a long time?
It was sad, but it was also a very different company. Interestingly, I moved all of the services, support functions to KL, and ultimately my role had to move to KL, so I had to leave because it no longer existed in Australia. So it was sad, but it was the final chapter. Sad to leave, but still keep in touch with lots of those people who are part of my network and still call on them for advice and, guidance. So it's always sad, but it's just part of a journey, right? We can never, if we're lucky, we can stay in one company for our entire careers, if that's what we want. But it's part of my journey, and it was a good stepping stone for other things. So
incredible stepping stone.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of roles you had kind of post GSK before you got to Sodexo where you are today. I was really interested in particularly, is it myDNA?
Yeah.
That you were with. And when I first saw that, I thought it's the two extremes. You've got one of the biggest companies in the world, global footprint, and everything that comes with that. And then you went to a startup. So talk us through that. What did you experience the difference between the two?
So why I did that was I had another moment of not sure I want to do IT anymore. And then I had a colleague who said, hey, we need someone like you to come in as a business operations person at myDNA. myDNA is a startup, genetic testing, amazing story. But I said, all right, went in and chatted to the CEO, and I thought, oh yeah, this will be good. This will be different. But, it was a great learning experience because it was in, again, a non-IT function, so business side, commercial focused. But what I learned there and what the company taught me was the importance of support functions. In order to grow and operate a business successfully, you really need to rely on the support functions, IT, finance, sales and marketing. Otherwise, a company can't function. So I was on the other side and relying on the IT people to do things for us. But what it also showed me are the financial commercial pressures as well that sometimes we don't see in a support function. And it was great bunch of people. Again, just learned a lot, but I don't think I could have stayed in a small startup forever. I think it also made me realize that I'm a person that needs to work in corporate. I actually like to have the processes and the funding behind me to rely on, and the support functions that I call on as well, in order to be a true business enabler. I need people behind me to support me, which at myDNA we didn't have because it was a small company. So yeah, that's interesting. Again, that's probably interesting advice, isn't it, for anyone? Is sometimes it's figuring out the right kind of organisation by size or structure or that works for you. Some people really thrive in that startup world where there's 10 people in a room trying to create something, and other people are much better in a village where they're in a community and they're kind of collaborating in a different way. I think that neither's right, neither's wrong. It's whatever's right for the individual. And again, it's quite interesting there that you recognise that. Yeah. And then you've obviously found yourself more recently with Sodexo as IT director. So you've been in that role, I guess, also similar role with GSK. I guess often it's hard to know what a CIO does all day. I'm not saying you don't do anything, by the way, when I say that. But what does a day in the life look like for you? Yeah. So every day is slightly different, but also the same. So, 3 days a week I come into the office in St Kilda Road. And I actually like being in the office. I like the team collaboration, being around people. Yep. And then 2 days we work from home. Day in the life is a lot of meetings, but it's just meeting people, understanding whether we're part of a bid team, putting up IT solutions as part of a bid, part of improving technology at one of our remote mining villages. So it's a lot of meetings, but then a lot of collaboration and problem solving. There are some weeks when I think I wish I had time to do some of the things that we actually meet about, but that's just the day in the life of, I guess, a senior leader. But lots, so a typical day is a lot of meetings, but also time to reflect and do things as well. Meeting vendors or, having team collaborations and team meetings, touching base with everyone. I've got a team that covers the countries. I've got Perth, Melbourne and Brisbane. So it's about trying to network and connect with all of my staff to make sure that they have an opportunity to talk with me, not just their direct report managers. So yeah, lots of collaboration, I think, is what I would say.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And what excites you about your role the most?
What excites me is what we're able to do. When I took the role on 3 and a bit years ago, IT didn't have a very good sort of reputation. And over the 3 years with the team behind me, we've been able to really build a stronger business relationship. So lots of business partnering. And I think what excites me is that we're continuing on that journey. We're still not 100% where I want to be, but we're on that journey, and we're getting called upon for more collaboration within the business as well. So that excites me, that there's so much to do, and we've got lots of ideas. My focuses for the next little while is really introducing digital solutions to make life easier for our frontline staff and even some of our office staff, but also doing more with data. One of the things I think at Sodexo is we have so much data, but we don't use it in the right way to help us to make decisions or change ways of working. So my sort of focus area is to look to see how can we improve how we use data better, whether it's reporting and analytics services, and introducing more digital solutions for our staff.
You're incredibly customer focused. Do you think that medical sales rep's still itching to get out?
100%. 100%. Yep.
You mentioned a couple of people through our conversation there that have mentored you, or you're a coach as well, specifically that you mentioned. And I guess that we're shaped by the contributions and the feedback of those people that we encounter. What would you, on reflection, consider to be the most significant feedback that you've ever received?
I think it's trust your gut.
Yeah.
When you get those funny butterflies in your tummy, it's a sign for me personally that inside I know I can do it, but I've not done it before, so I'm nervous. So it's just trust your gut. Ask for help if you're not sure. Don't be afraid to ask questions and admit that you don't know something. And asking for help and trusting your gut. That's my thing. Yes,
that's fantastic. I think obviously the personal development never stops. It continues to go. So how do you continue to invest in your own personal development?
Yeah. So I stay in touch with the people that were sort of influential, I guess, in my career. Yeah. So networking, I do a lot of reading. So at the moment, I'm reading a lot through the Gartner website and solutions, and joining some of their online webinars as well, even though they're in the middle of the night. They're actually really very interesting. And reading. Yeah. I love to read. Actually, I'm not a reader. I'm an audiobook listener. So I'm always interested for when people recommend new books to read. So I'm always learning in that regard.
What's next on your playlist? I normally say what's next on your pile. But
I've just finished one, which was not something about career development. I thought I'll sidestep. And I listened to Maria Sharapova's autobiography, which was a nice sort of difference.
Okay.
But now I want to get back into something, and I'm open to recommendations. So,
what did you take away from Maria Sharapova's book?
It was interesting because I was fascinated by her story, but also what it reinforced is don't believe in what you hear in the media.
Yes.
Do not believe the media.
Yeah.
Unless you know the facts, do not believe the media. So it was a very interesting story.
There you go. It kind of takes us back to data, I guess, and keep digging for the truth.
That's right.
Yeah. So what's next for you personally? What do you hope to achieve in the next, say, 5-10 years?
Look, I think I'm quite happy in this role. I'd like to do more in this role. So, focusing on bringing more like I mentioned before, digital solutions, and really just encouraging my team and really helping the business to grow. So one of our biggest focus areas at Sodexo is improving the connectivity solutions at some of our very remote mining sites. So that's going to mean a little bit of capital investment, but it's actually working with the team to put business cases to improve on connectivity to help our staff at those sites do their jobs easier. So yeah, I think data and digital is my focus for the next few years.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Okay, final question. If you had one single piece of sage advice that you would give to somebody starting out today in the world of tech and trying to figure out what they're going to do, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to take on roles that get presented to you. Push yourself out of your comfort zone, because you learn only when you're out of your comfort zone. And you don't always have to have the answers or the know-how, and don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
And speak to people, read, listen. Speaking, reading, listening is learning, and just take chances and be happy and enjoy, enjoy the job.
Well, absolutely. And again, if we go right back to the start where we started, you weren't enjoying what you were doing coding and programming. Sorry. So you did something different, and look at where it took you.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't always have to be linear. Our trajectory in our career, sometimes we take these side steps, but it kind of projects us forward again in the right direction. And I think your career is really testament to that. So congratulations, because you've had a brilliant career, and I'm sure you're still going to achieve way more. And yeah, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to Tales from Tech Titans, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to get more insights about tech careers, then check out the Emmbr, that's EMMBR LinkedIn page for the latest updates, articles, and engaging discussions.